Today on CityCast Denver, the Denny's on Alameda and Santa Fe abruptly closed without warning last month, taking down yet another hangout in a city with a dearth of late-night options. Coincidentally, Susie Q. Smith, a world-renowned poet, educator, and performer who grew up in the booths of Denver's diners, wrote a great piece about the importance of these spaces in the latest issue of Denver's magazine. Susie joins me to talk about why diners are so much more than just low-cost restaurants. Oh, and stick around for our sponsored interview with Ethan Hemming from Warren Village, a really special place in Denver that's helping our community get and stay housed. Today is Thursday, December 5th. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. Good morning, CityCast Denver listeners. I'm excited to be here with you today, and we've got a great show lined up. But first, I want to talk to you about why I love what I do here at CityCast Denver and why I'm asking you to become a member, which you can do right now at membership.citycast.fm. As a podcast host, one of the best parts of my job is getting to sit down with smart, interesting people who love Denver and help you and I better understand it. From community members organizing to help their neighbors, all the way to talking to the mayor about his big plans for the city. I love bringing you these conversations that connect the dots of life in Denver. And as you know, we have a lot of fun making this show because life in Denver isn't just about trudging through the serious stuff. It's also about these in-between moments that delight, surprise, and inspire us. Like taste testing ice cream to finally decide once and for all which one is the best, or talking about the latest internet gossip. We do what we do so you can be in the know about everything happening here. So at a time when reading national headlines might feel uninspiring, a little miserable, and kind of suck, I invite you to take local action and support CityCast Denver by becoming a member at membership.citycast.fm today. Your support ensures that we get to continue connecting you to the news and information that inspires, delights, and engages you. If you couldn't live without us, support us. For as little as $8 a month or $80 a year, you can help us keep connecting the dots for Denver. Head to membership.citycast.fm today to join us. Plus, this part is so cool. You get an exclusive members-only tote bag, and it has a zipper on it, which is kind of extra awesome because you can actually close your tote bag. But that's what you get. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being a part of CityCast Denver. Let me do this again. Susie Q. Smith, welcome to CityCast Denver.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I can't believe this is the first time I'm saying that to you. I've thought about you so much in making this show, and I'm so glad that this is the moment we get to talk.
Me too.
Because this is something that the topic is very dear to me, and you wrote this gorgeous piece about diners, and I was like, we have to talk about this. But so recently I noticed that the Denny's on Alameda and Santa Fe had closed up shop sort of out of nowhere, and they left a note on the door. They didn't really say what happened. I actually called Denny's corporate to try to find out. I could get no information. And it was just, I was thinking a lot about Denny's had become this sort of last resort diner for me in the last few years, but it meant a lot to me as a kid. And I would love to hear from you. You wrote about this a little bit, but what was your relationship with Denny's?
My relationship with Denny's, particularly high school.
Yeah.
High school was really, really significant. That was one of the places to hang out. So it was Perkins, Denny's, Village Inn, IHOP. There's one Denny's that I would hang out in high school that's still open.
Which one?
So that's amazing. The one Florida and Havana.
Yeah.
Still there. Not many others.
No.
So that's...
Mine was a Village Inn, and it was torn down in Cherry Creek,
okay,
north.
Yeah. I also spent a lot of time there. Yep.
And then there was a Denny's on Leetsdale that we used to go smoke at in high school.
Yep, that one's gone now too.
So
and the Perkins on Colfax and Colorado Boulevard also. That was my primary.
Yeah.
And that one's also gone.
It's so crazy.
It's a bank, and then it was a different bank, and now it's a boarded up bank.
That reminds me of the fate of the Denver Diner, which was particularly stinging to me. That place played such a pivotal role in my whole life, and then to have it turned into a bank just felt...
It's a slap in the face in so many ways.
It's hard to explain, and that's kind of what I want to get into is you really, in this piece Toast World that you wrote for Denver's magazine, you describe these, I think what folks would call a third space so well. What is it about a diner? What did a diner the purpose serve for you?
I think the diner was important for so many reasons. One, that it was affordable, right? As teenagers, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of places that were safe for us to go and be and exist, particularly late at night. And now I do wonder what spaces exist for young people late at night. As a 16, 17-year-old, right, when you're out till 10, 11 p.m., right, there aren't a lot of places that are safe to go where it's where you have some sort of adult supervision and you're in public, but you can still be an independent person, figuring out kind of who you are. And I think for a lot of us, and I was hanging out, when I was a teenager, I was extremely goth and, with hints of punk. And I would say that was the bulk of my friend group. And a lot of those kids who weren't necessarily welcome in a lot of other spaces, we found each other in those spaces. And a lot of kids who had been kicked out of their homes, a lot of kids who were runaways, et cetera, like who didn't have a lot of money, but could spend $1 on coffee and hang out for many, many hours and be safe in a space that was open all night or pretty late. So that gave us a safe space to exist. And the coffee shops were important as well, right? When we think about like the Muddies and the Paris on the Platte and the Market and all of these, and the St. Mark's and all the other places that we went. But those places cost more money.
They have fancier coffee too.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, this is where we saw espresso sort of for the first time.
Exactly.
Kind of
So you needed, you kind
diner cup.
Yeah, and they needed you to spend at least $5 to hang out there. Right?
Which again, we're talking the mid 90s.
Exactly.
You're a teenager. That's
right.
Like, I made
$5 is what you have for the week.
Yeah, I made $4 an hour at my first job.
Yeah, exactly. I made $5. Pizza Hut, was balling out. But that really, really mattered. And there were a lot of times, like building relationships in those diners too, where you could have, $1 or $2. And if we didn't have enough money to tip our servers, we found ways to work with them and do side work, to hang out for several hours, to sort of apologize for taking up so much space.
And
they just let us
I
exist.
rarely remember those waitresses. Mostly they were waitresses at Paris. Sometimes or Muddies. You would get a dude for sure, but I don't ever remember feeling pressure from them sometimes when there was like 15 of us and everybody ordered water but one person, they would be like, come on, you guys.
Right.
Like, come on. But for the most part, it felt like they were sort of watching over us a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely felt like they were kind of these bonus elders that would, and sometimes come sit and hang out and chat with us and give us life advice and tell us stories. And, we really did become friends while we rolled silverware and, married ketchups.
I loved that part of your piece, just the image of watching teenagers help with side work.
Sometimes you don't have any money, but you really want French fries,
Yeah. And I don't know. What is, that was such a visceral part of your piece for me. But you talk a lot in this piece about the foundation or the function of this space for you as the artist you are today.
Absolutely.
What did the diner serve for you to help you become the Susie you are today?
It was a place where I could go and write and drink copious amounts of coffee and be left alone, right? And for many hours. If I wanted to just go sit in a little corner somewhere and write for a long, long time and not have anyone bother me, the diner was a place to do that. And it wasn't fancy. There weren't a ton of distractions, but I could still be, in public and present with people. There's a lot to observe if I decide to, but it was a safe place away from everyone else. And so, before I ever had a residency or retreat, right? Perkins was great.
Perkins was your poetry residency,
right?
As a teenager,
absolutely. So when you need to get out of the house and not be with your family, and then of course later, and then I lived with roommates, and so when there's a lot going on in your household, and that's not necessarily the best place to create because you need some space from it. It was a place where I could go spend very few dollars and be for many hours.
Yeah. You have a daughter. I know she's in her 20s now, but where does she go, or what have you heard anything from young people? Because in this piece, you're kind of searching. Where do kids go now? What do they do now? Do you know what young people are doing these days to find that place that you found?
The internet is where they go. That's where they go.
That's a good point.
And that is a little tragic, I think, that they don't have a space to be together in person. I think there are a lot of social skills being redeveloped, reconfigured. And it concerns me for sure that they don't, particularly for the ones who need to get out of their house, right?
When they need some separation from their house. Maybe their house is chaotic in some capacity.
And so for the ones who are not necessarily in the best home environments, like where do they go? And where do they hang out? And if teens are not hanging out outside of their homes, that makes it really challenging, I think. And so where are those spaces? And those are the questions I have, right? There are very, very few places for young teens to go just hang out and be people.
Especially in the evening.
Exactly.
I think, because
Exactly.
I think we know, I mean, I just remember we would hang out sometimes on the backside of the Cherry Creek Mall, or we would go to Cheeseman Park. But it was always, there was a security guard or there was a police officer or somebody telling you that you weren't supposed to be there. And diners were a great place that you could go. And especially that in between time when you're 18 or 20, you're not necessarily, not that the bars are a supplement, but at least, our social lives maybe started to revolve around a club or a bar. But at that age, there was nowhere else to go but a diner.
Right. Where else can you hang out? There's no place you're welcome.
Right.
And so thinking about, nighttime activities for young people, right? Like every place has a curfew. You can't hang out at the park all night.
I got a curfew ticket for trying to hang out at the park all night in Cheeseman Park.
Right. And rec centers close, right? Libraries close. Like, so so thinking about affordable spaces for young people to go just be young people together. I think that's what is lost.
You talk about a lot of different diners throughout the eras of Denver that you've lived here in your piece, but I wonder, did you have a favorite diner in Denver?
Oh, my favorite was absolutely Perkins on Colfax and Colorado Boulevard.
That's so funny.
I'm from Park Hill, so that was the closest to the neighborhood.
Proximity, right? Yeah.
So that's where I spent the most time because of proximity. It was a block away from my middle school that also is now torn down. So.
Oh, did you go?
I did.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
It's a parking lot.
So it's a parking lot now. Yeah. And then the Perkins is now a boarded up bank. So it's an interesting thing to watch, right? And all this is a block away from Denver Children's Home. Mm-hmm. So it's all interesting to watch this sort of blight occur in the process of in the name of development, right? And what it's becoming. And I think that, closing schools is another thing that I'm keeping an eye on, right? Because that's something that,
happen.
Exactly. Because when there's a school, then it limits the number of liquor licenses you can have in a space, right? And so closing a school also allows more commercial liquor licenses to be possible, right? So I'm looking at the long-term plan for that corner and what's possible. Yeah.
Because it's not just that it's disrupting where kids are going to school and the community they have around it, but what happens after that school closes.
Exactly. And what that neighborhood becomes.
So, I mean, again, like I said, you have a daughter, you've worked with young people. What do you think Denver needs or could be doing right now to better serve them? I mean, maybe it's as simple as opening a diner?
I mean, really, and being welcoming to the teens who come in, right? Finding ways like, I think there are so many different co-working spaces now, right? And when we think about that, and that's not accessible to anyone,
it costs
to everyone.
money to walk in the door there.
Right. And it's not a place to just sort of hang out, right? And so I think about, so I think what would that look like? A co-working space, but that is free and for teens. And that allows some level of supervision. And it doesn't even have to be necessarily fully free, right? It's not that they won't spend any money.
Right. But it's different than like you're paying hourly to be at a co-working space versus walking into a Denny's and you're paying, now probably $2 for a cup of coffee.
Right. Right. And we do still have, right, some wonderful coffee shops, right, that are still happening and still holding space for people to hang out and just exist that don't cost $1 million. But those are fewer and fewer every day, right? And so many of them, and I think, like the Starbucks of it all has done so much damage in that space as well, right? And really forced so many of those to close. That I think that's one thing that we really need to do is support the local spaces that support us, right? Particularly, I'm thinking about Whittier Cafe, Gypsy House Cafe, St. Mark's, right? Like all of the ones that are still holding strong, like we need to hold them together as well.
Yeah. What do you think Denver is missing when we don't have diners? What else are we missing beyond those spaces just existing?
I think we're missing people, right? I think that it's been feels like this war on poor people. Right? The rapid gentrification of this city has been really, really transformative culturally. I think about the way that I evolved as an artist. Not only did I use the diners to create, right, but then also the coffee houses were so so important to us, right? To me and all of the poets and musicians, right? That was something that was very normal as a teen to just sort of go to your nearest coffee shop and say, hey, can we have an open mic here on Tuesdays? And they were like, yeah, right? Like, you can't do that with a Caribou coffee. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Although my friend Katie used to book noise shows at the Starbucks on 16th Street Mall until I think they stopped her from doing that.
That brings me a great deal of joy.
Yeah, it was amazing. I wrote about it once. I remember being like, "This is phenomenal. How is she? How are they doing it? Oh, they're just doing it until they get stopped." But I agree with you. It's not something.
It's not built for that. And corporates certainly would not be pleased, right? And thinking about, and that was how we sort of developed together, right? And built community and found each other again and again, right? We're through these little coffee shop networks, these diner networks, and we're like, okay, this is where we're all going. And building together, right? And building that collective. And I think that being an artist from Denver, there's a reason our community is so interlocked, right? Because we had to know each other. We were such a small community, right? Like, the only way that anyone was coming to our shows is if we come to each other's shows, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But we also learned together and grew together. And there's this really, really beautiful ecosystem, I think, that we're losing because people are more and more disconnected, right? People are not in relationship with each other. And there's still there are some great nonprofits that are supporting some of this work to continue to build relationships and cultivate that. But I think a lot of it was so organic then, and we're really losing a lot of that.
The organic nature is a great point because, again, like you said, there's some great nonprofits that work specifically with young people. There is program. I know Youth on Record does like an open mic night. Those things are wonderful, but they are outgrowths of the era that we grew up in. But I think the point you're making is like the organic nature of running into that friend that you would have never met from Aurora,
right?
Because they came to see their friend perform,
right.
Or just like meeting another person who is a poet. And maybe you're from a group of people that are musicians, but you're the poet. How do you meet other poets? You have to have that organic meeting place, that third place,
right.
that intersection of humanity where all kinds of people can meet. Because that's the thing I love about diners too, and I think about a lot is the Denver diner was so crucial for me as a teenager because we would cruise up and down Colfax, but you'd see cops in there and punks,
right,
and news people and politicians and nurses and people getting off work from hospitals, and everybody was sitting at tables next to each other. Where else does that happen? Not often.
Right. And particularly when you think about the nature of the diner and the coffee shop, right? And this sort of cafe society, the only thing to do there is to talk.
And it's one of my favorite things to do in the
and just
world.
being in conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so much of that is being lost. So many of those organic conversations. How many times were you with friends at a diner and then you start a conversation with someone at the next table and the
Or
table
they
over there,
overhear
right?
you.
And then you're like, oh, this thing. And then all of a sudden it becomes this big group conversation, right? That just happens organically out of that, and building relationships in that way too. So you're not only there with who you're there with, but you're there and ending up in all kinds of conversations with people you never would have talked to otherwise. And I think that is something that we're losing as well. It's just really being in conversation with people, right? And I think that part, thinking about like the Denver Diner is a great example of how many different kinds of people were present in that space. And I think about how divided we are as a city, but also, of course, as a nation, as a world, right? And how much of that is because we're so far out of dialogue, right? And how much we're not in relationship with each other. And it's very, very easy to hate people you don't know, right?
Or that you don't talk to face to face.
That you would never see face to face, right? And this is something that the diner's allowed for, that people who wouldn't normally hang out are just together. And you are seated close enough that you're hearing each other chat, and then you become part of each other's lives in some way.
That magic of chance.
Mm-hmm.
The again, the face-to-face thing I think is huge. Like you're saying, like when we talk to each other online, it's not, I don't want to say it's calculated, but like I write a response and then you write a response, and then I write a response and you write a response. And when we're talking in person, there's more room for things to evolve, or I don't know. It's such an intangible thing, but I'm thinking now about all these moments I had where these conversations became explosive, or I learned something amazing, or that's when I knew that person was really my friend. And it was because we had this space to sit and talk to each other.
That's exactly it, right? And I think about too, like all of the venues, right? And performing, like that's one piece of it, right? But being able to sit down and talk and hang out, that's when you get to like understand who that person really is and really build relationships. And that's what we're really missing now, I think.
Especially even after a performance, right?
Right. Then we would all go to the Denver Diner or the White Spot or the Denny's or the Village Inn, et cetera, and hang out for hours and drink coffee.
Yeah, and hang out and talk about the show, that either the show we went to see or the show that we were performing in or the show our friend was performing in, to just like to sort of download like how that went, what happened, and then what's next.
Right.
Well, Susie, this was really lovely. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And now, please enjoy our sponsored interview with Ethan Hemming, President and CEO of Warren Village.
Hey, I'm CityCast Content Director Andrea Slenzi here with Ethan Hemming. He's the President and CEO of Warren Village. Ethan, welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. Great to be here.
Warren Village has been supporting single-parent families in Denver for 50 years. Can you share what makes it unique in addressing housing and economic stability?
Absolutely. I think really what makes it unique is that we bring together three distinct forms of support that are essential for a family, a single-parent family, to transition and to really achieve transformation of their life economically and personally. So first, the foundation is affordable housing that's safe. Then we provide services, opportunity, education for the parent. We serve moms and dads, mostly moms, but we provide everything from workforce education to access to community college education. Mental health is super important, especially these days. So everything that adult needs that they identify to really make that transformative journey, we provide here on site. And then we cap it all off with a state-licensed, 5-star quality-rated early learning center that serves kids from 6 weeks old to 5 years old on site, that really helps them achieve ultimately what they want to find out in education and success, right? And that's the second gen, right? The little ones. Breaking that cycle of intergenerational poverty really begins with the littlest ones.
So why have this two-generation approach that supports both parents and children with the wraparound service? Like, how does this holistic model help the families achieve a lasting self-sufficiency?
I mean, it's research-based, right? The research shows that the best way to help someone make that transformative journey, to interrupt intergenerational poverty, is through those holistic services and complementary services. Because if you think about it, the folks that come to us come from really tough situations of being abjectly homeless, living in a car, domestic violence, shelter, and all the challenges that come with that, right? That didn't happen overnight and that are very interrelated. Well, you're going to need equally interrelated, equally complicated, research-based services on site at one time to help interrupt that. And it is not easy. It's certainly not cheap. And it's not quick. But we've been doing this for 50 years, and we have the outcomes to show that this really does work for the single-parent family.
There are multiple Warren Village campuses all across Denver. Can you tell us about these different locations and the new one that just opened in Alameda?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, we have 4 locations that we provide services on. And the point is really about differentiation, because each family that comes to us is going to be in a slightly different place, right? It needs slightly different needs and be at a different point in their trajectory. So for example, First Step in Northwest Denver, we only serve single teenage parents. If you look at Gilpin, right, we serve any single parent, mom, dad, or even if a grandparent, if they have custody of their child. That program is modeled on a transitional housing basis. So that's a 2 to a 4-year program. And in Alameda, we actually just moved in the first family yesterday, right, on our goal of 89 families by the springtime. That's going to be a slightly different model, right? Still have the early learning center, still be 2-gen, but the folks there can stay a little bit longer. They may need, some different services that are going to be unique to Alameda, whether that's going to be physical or mental health. We'll meet them where they're at down there. And then out at Ivy Crossing, we don't own that property, but we really work with the apartment owner there to help folks who are close to being on the edge of homelessness, kind of keep them stabilized. We call it upstream impact.
You're celebrating 50 years of helping single-parent families in Denver. I mean, what does the journey of Warren Village look like over the past 50 years? Where did you start? What are some of the ways that you got to where you're at right now?
The journey actually began in the late 50s, right? So more than 50 years ago, with a small group of dedicated parishioners at a local church who came together, saw a problem, and started planning. And by 1969, they had gotten their articles of incorporation and got a loan from the federal government, a $2 million loan, to build this 95-unit apartment complex across the street from where I am now. And they just had an audacious vision, right? And they were tenacious in the planning. And then they opened in 1974. And so from there, it has been evolution, right? Which has been great to expand, to add the early learning center, to add mental health, to add multiple sites, right? Because we're constantly learning, we're constantly looking in the community for the need and better ways to serve. So our mission has been unwavering, but the way we do it has evolved because we're a learning organization and we want to improve as we go to meet the needs that are presented to us.
Could you tell me a success story, one that you hold on to that you think about often?
Yeah. There's one parent who came to us right when I got here, maybe 8 years ago, and came from out of state, living in absolute squalor with her children, but found us, tracked us down, got out here and moved in, spent 4 years with us, took advantage of every program we offer, the early learning center, mental health, workforce, credentials, everything she could do, got her degree, and was able to move on to successively impressive and wonderful jobs that gave her greater income, greater stability, and most important for her, a future for her children. And they looked to her as a role model and they looked to her as a success story. And that's what motivated her and kept her going. And now this woman comes to us and helps us with outreach and speaking opportunities, talking to the board, to our community. And she is my role model. And I have learned a great deal from this person.
So for those who are inspired to support your mission, how can they get involved?
That's the neat thing. We are, for 50 years, a community-based organization, and we rely on our community in many different ways. Volunteering on any of our locations, serving on a board committee, serving on an event committee, coming down and just helping out with babysitting, whatever it might be, could be an entryway, right? So folks can go to our website and find those volunteer opportunities. And obviously, we're a nonprofit, right? Over half of the revenues to run this organization comes from donations from individuals, from corporations, from foundations. So we obviously are definitely welcoming a financial investment. There's a donate button on our website, warrenvillage.org, that people can avail themselves of. So many different ways to get involved.
Ethan Hemming, thank you for being here. And thanks to everyone at Warren Village this year, celebrating 50 years of helping single parent families in Denver.
Thank you, Andrea.
Learn how to get involved or make a donation at warrenvillage.org. Again, warrenvillage.org to learn more. And we have a link for you in our show notes as well, so you are just a click away. Thank you for listening.
That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell Denny's Corporate about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to our morning newsletter and learn more about us at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya! And now, please enjoy our sponsored interview with Ethan Hemming, President. Back-to-back Suburbans, presidential, I be swerving. That's my girl, Tay Money.